It's burned. Is it? Champagne was obviously frozen in the bottle at some point. Oh, simmer down now, ladies, because I have here another episode of the top 10 favorite and from what I believe are the best performances by some of the greatest actresses in all of film. Oh, that's right. I am starting from 10 and then serenading my way up to number 1. Can you dig it? And can you also dig? I have seen every film attainable of these artists, so all of these lists come from truthful and gorgeous accuracy. Now, folks, to continue our Black History Month celebration, which should be celebrated every month, let's be honest, I thought about one inspirational, drop-dead gorgeous singer and actress who has graced the stage, television, and film. The absolutely beautiful and iconic Diahann Carroll. Born as Carol Diane Johnson in the Bronx, but raised in Harlem, Diahann was influenced right from the very beginning to pursue the arts. New York just does that to you, doesn't it? She went to the music and art high school, and by the time she was 15 years old, she started modeling for the popular magazine Epitome. But being a true singer, she and a friend auditioned for Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts, and then later auditioned for the show Chance of a Lifetime, which was basically the 50s version of American Idol. Literally being the chance of a lifetime, Diahann continuously won the top prize of $1,000 and began performing at nightclubs. Her name was changed to Diahann Carroll by this point, and it wasn't long until Broadway and Hollywood would come around knocking. However, it must be known, Diahann Carroll was certainly hard to get in Hollywood, and understandably so, because Carroll was a child and student of the theater, and she didn't really trust Hollywood film or even television for that matter, not because of its lack of impact or promise for white people, but because no black artist was getting great roles in film or television at this point, and she never really felt welcomed in Hollywood. That will all slightly change over time as we get into the list, obviously, but let me tell you something, folks. Diahann Carroll is truly one of the most gorgeous and captivating artists in every platform of film, television, and theater. She had such an illustrious career during a time of such difficulty for black artists, which is why she is held highly, and rightfully so, as one of the most inspirational black artists ever. You must also, of course, know, I only cover film, as tough as it is, and even though her film career was quite limited, including made-for-TV films, she has still blessed the world with authentic and real characters in film. Not to say that she didn't with her monumental television series work, which I'll get to, but real quick, guys, let's talk about the impact she has made being one of the greatest Broadway stars of all time, being influenced by Marlon Brando to go back to New York when she was already in Hollywood to really hone in on her craft on stage. Brando sent her every Acting 101 book known to man at that point to help her propel her craft, and she even studied with the Actors Studio at one point. She made her Broadway debut at 19 years old with the musical House of Flowers, written by Truman Capote, starring alongside Pearl Bailey, earning Carroll her first Tony Award nomination for Best Actress, and then following up years later in the Richard Rodgers musical No Strings, playing the lead role of Barbara Woodruff, a role that Richard wrote specifically for Diahann. For her amazing work in this musical, Diahann won her first and only Tony for Best Actress, resulting her being the first black female artist to win a Tony in a leading role ever in 1962. She technically tied with Anna Maria Alberghetti for Carnival, but come on, more of the glory has to go to Carroll. When you hear the original Broadway cast recording with Carroll, it will make your heart flutter. Not to mention the OBC recording of House of Flowers. When she sings A Sleepin' Bee, oh, you melt like butter. And Barbara's cover isn't that bad either. Her other notable stage performances include Agnes of God, starring alongside Geraldine Page, and then Sunset Boulevard, playing the lead role of Norma Desmond. That cast recording is off the chain unbelievable. Okay, let's get to her film. Wait, hold it right there, mister. You know, I can't go forward without at least mentioning a few of her television accomplishments, like her groundbreaking Golden Globe winning and Emmy-nominated performance in her very own TV show, Julia, about a young single mother working as a nurse in modern times, 1968. The show itself is so sweet and heartwarming, even though it received so much backlash from the Black community that it wasn't truthful to the real heartbreaking struggle at the time. But Carroll always defended the show, being very ahead of its time, being a program that would bring both white and Black audiences together. The show only lasted 3 seasons, which is still great in retrospect, and still left a mark on society of family values. So when The Cosby Show came on in the 80s, the theme of family values flew off the ratings chart. But such as art goes, right? What is once controversial and disliked at a certain time will be reassessed years later and then loved and appreciated. But what is always appreciated when it premiered then and now to this day is Diahann Carroll's electric and feisty performance as Dominique Devereaux in the classic soap opera Dynasty. Good God, is this show ridiculous and at the same time so entertaining. I just love the fact that Diahann Carroll was home one night and she saw this show on television and said to herself, well, that would be fun. And that's good news for us because it had been a long time since Diahann Carroll played such a real bitch. Her words also, not mine. People often remember her for her monumental television work, of course, especially with her Emmy-nominated performances on Naked City, Grey's Anatomy, and, oh man, let's not forget her iconic performance as Marianne Gilbert on A Different World. My God, every scene between she and Patti LaBelle is laugh-out-loud hysterical. At the heart of all that is Diahann Carroll's strength, perseverance, and elegance, which has stayed so true all throughout her illustrious and monumental career. So pull out that unfrozen champagne and caviar, because it's time to really talk about the top 10 best performances in film by the one and only, the exquisitely beautiful Diahann Carroll. Starting off at number 10, we have one hell of a cult classic called The 5 Heartbeats, made by one of the quote-unquote godfathers of Black independent film, Robert Townsend, centered around a Motown/Temptations-like group, even though, fun fact, most of the story was based on the stories of the group The Dells, among many others, of course. But Diahann plays Eleanor Potter, the faithful wife to their manager Jimmy, played by Chuck Peterson. Diahann has a small role here, but she is just as effective as you would expect, especially the sequence where Jimmy is being forced out of managing the group by Big Red, played viciously by Hawthorne James, and then they receive threatening phone calls. The moment when Jimmy leaves the apartment and then Eleanor hears the phone ringing again, and then rings again, she gets closer and closer, and then finally picks up. She knows something's going to happen to Jimmy and runs down the stairs since the elevator is taken up with all of her fearful energy she has for Jimmy. Spoiler alert, by the time we get to the funeral for Jimmy, oh man, we feel for the whole family. But I love how she handles Big Red right to his frickin' face because we know he was the one that took care of Jimmy. The way she says, "How dare you?" She does it with such elegance and fierce strength, it's incredible. She adds such gravitas to this film, which indeed makes it even better. Number 9, The Sweetest Gift. Oh, bring on the made-for-TV joy with this one, starring Diahann Carroll as Mrs. Wilson and Helen Shaver as Mrs. Martin, two mothers who have ranches of their own and are doing their best to keep their ranches as well as raising their rebellious children in still quite a prejudiced area in Florida. All the while, the fathers are absent and both of their kids start to become friends. Alright, let's be honest folks, this movie isn't life-changing. The dialogue especially is really nothing special. But these heartwarming made-for-TV family dramas are not known necessarily for their dialogue, right? They're known for their believable and giving performances. And Diahann Carroll's Daytime Emmy-nominated performance is certainly the main attraction. She is so unbelievably heartwarming and commanding that she makes even the most flimsy of writing such a winner. Number 8, The Split. Came out in 1968 based on the novel starring football rock star and one of the greatest fullbacks ever, Jim Brown as McClane, who devises a robbery of the LA Coliseum, which goes splendidly, and then he hides the money with his ex-wife, played with such tense magnetism by Diahann Carroll. If you've seen it, you know her role is quite small as well, considering the roller coaster plot with the twists and turns, as well as the phenomenal cast you got here, including Ernest Borgnine, Julie Harris, Donald Sutherland, James Whitmore, Jack Klugman, and Gene Hackman. It's one hell of an amazing ensemble, on top of a groundbreaking move of casting Jim Brown in the lead role. But yeah, too bad the film itself doesn't deliver that much. Diahann Carroll, though, gives us such a heartfelt and tragic glimpse of an ex-wife who still has that smidgen of real love for their man, even though you can feel that they're just being used. And boy, does she let him know it. Now, I won't spoil too much because I still think this film is worth seeing because of the strong performances, but the climactic scene between Carroll and James Whitmore in the bedroom, is absolutely terrifying because, we feel a rape is about to be committed. And by the end of that scene, I know for me, I am still just as shocked as I was the first time I saw it. So all in all, for me, Carroll's performance takes the cake for this one. Number 7, Livin' for Love, the Natalie Cole story. A surprisingly effective autobiographical story of the Grammy-winning iconic artist, Natalie Cole, directed once again by Robert Townsend. This is a very, very interesting made-for-TV picture, with Natalie Cole narrating the beginning of her journey, with the fantastic Teresa Randall playing Natalie, trying her best to live her own life as an artist, not living under the umbrella of her father, the amazing Nat King Cole, of course. But once we reach her later years, Natalie Cole takes over playing herself. And she does it quite beautifully, actually. The film itself is pretty standard for a made-for-television film, being adapted from Natalie Cole's own book, Angel on My Shoulder. But Diahann Carroll, as her mother, Maria Cole, is, to me, what gives this film its juice. Maria Cole is just a begrudging mother who almost feels extremely jealous of her own daughter, having the affections being stolen from her, so to speak, when she has sacrificed so much for her husband, Nat King Cole's own career. It's a very interesting and heartbreaking character study between mother and daughter, with Natalie Cole trying her best to please her mother, but the stubbornness and constant disapproval from Carroll makes it so tragic that we just pray that Carroll will really accept the family legacy of music being carried forward with Natalie. The scenes between Carroll and both Natalie Cole's, Randall, and Cole herself are really electric, with Diahann again adding such gravitas and vulnerability to the mother of Natalie Cole. Side note, the sequence where Natalie Cole is singing alongside her father on Unforgettable for the tribute album is so sweet and beautiful. I certainly teared up. Number 6, Eaves Bayou. One hell of an amazing film, ladies and gentlemen, directed by the awesome Cassie Lemons. In my opinion, one of the greatest directorial debuts for a filmmaker ever, period. Set in 1962 Louisiana, it chronicles our 10-year-old protagonist, Eve, played absolutely brilliantly by Jurnee Smollett, one of the greatest performances by a child actor ever. She one night sees her successful doctor of a father, played amazingly by Samuel L. Jackson, have an affair. She confides in her sister Cicely, played by Megan Good, but that's just the tip of the iceberg of secrets within this cursed family. Maybe Elzora, the town fortune teller and most definitely witch, played astoundingly brilliantly by Diahann Carroll, can help, but some things are better left unsaid. The whole ensemble is grade A outstanding, with Diahann Carroll stealing every scene that she's in, unintentionally. When I first saw this as a kid, I was crazily affected by Diahann Carroll's makeup, along with her beautiful body language and movement as the fortune teller. And even to this day, it is very difficult to even believe that is her. And apparently it was Diane's own idea to put on all that makeup because of pimples where they shot it. Just one instance of fast and brilliantly creative thinking behind building a character. If you have not seen this underrated gem and poetically, visually stunning film that Roger Ebert claimed was the best film of the year of 1997, ladies and gentlemen, I implore you all, very much so, to see it immediately. You will not regret it. Number 5, having our say, the Delaney Sisters' first 100 years. Of course, the made-for-television film adaptation of the true story behind the lives of the beautiful sisters Sadie and Bessie Delaney, who were among the civil rights pioneers born in the late 19th century. The story was chronicled by Amy Hill Harth, which became such a huge sensation. It became a Broadway play in 1995, co-starring Mary Alice, and then adapted to film in 1999 with two of the most perfect actors to play them, Ruby Dee and Carol. How funny that Diahann Carroll plays the older sister Sadie when she was actually 9 years younger than Ruby Dee, who plays the younger sister. But with the makeup to make them look 100 years old, they work splendidly together. As mentioned on my video on Ruby Dee, which you can find right here, thank you very much, every scene they have together just comes alive with their fiery chemistry that we just fall in love with them instantly. Not to mention the scene with one of my college professors, Nate Bynum. This is still a rarely seen film, so I recommend this film for sure for the lovely performances, the amazing chemistry between Dee and Carol. Number 4, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, the made-for-TV adaptation of the classic autobiographical opus by the goddess herself, Maya Angelou. I remember the very first time my mother showed this film to me on the VHS we had, and I remember just being mesmerized by this film. The first entry of a 7-book series of Miss Angelou's life is the deep dive exploration of she and her brother Bailey Jr. being abandoned by their parents, but raised by their grandmother, played just wonderfully by Esther Roll, in the south of Arkansas. They are then taken back to St. Louis by their father, played by Roger E. Mosley, to live with him, and their actual mother, played exquisitely, dynamically by Diahann Carroll. It's hard for Maya to really warm up to her own mother, understandably, even though Vivian, her mother, is so amazingly sweet, making up for the tainted loss of time. And once we see Vivian's own free lifestyle with her other boyfriend, Freeman, played by Paul Benjamin, bells are ringing in our heads for sure on the instability of her life. But yet she holds her own. She demands her own lifestyle, that she will not be controlled. And God Almighty, Diahann Carroll once again owns every inch of it. She is just everything in this role. In context, she really carries a lot on her back with this role, because for readers of the book and viewers, we already kind of resent this woman for abandoning her children, but then coming back with smiles, and then trying to understand how significant her insecurities are by feeling like she couldn't take care of her own kids. It's certainly a lot emotionally, and given the fact Diane was sent away briefly by her own parents to live with her aunt in North Carolina, I think adds a deeper notch in her performance here. The moment when it's Maya's birthday and Maya chooses to be mute after her horrible, traumatic raping, when Vivian is holding her close to her face, her confidence and positivity is just slowly fading away when she can't get Maya to talk. It's a very moving and tragic sequence. It is such a brave performance that I honestly wish it could be even higher. Number 3, Paris Blues. The great film which starred the best of the best, Paul Newman, Sidney Poitier, Joanne Woodward, and Diahann Carroll, as two couples falling in love in early 1960s Paris, where jazz is still alive and kicking. Poitier and Newman are the jazz musicians who are looking for more opportunity and sleep, of all things, until they happen to meet Joanne and Diane, who are pals on vacation in Paris. The original story was going to be an interracial romance, where Newman would be with Carroll and Poitier with Woodward, etc. But the damn code prohibited that at that time, so they switched. But it couldn't have worked out better, more perfect, since these couples would literally fall in love with each other while filming. As discussed in the great documentary series The Last Movie Stars, this was the fourth film Paul and Joanne did together, so their affair was in full effect. And as discussed in my Sidney Poitier video, Poitier and Carroll first met on set of Porgy and Bess, where their affair first started, but just grew with flying jazz colors during filming of this film. One thing you can't deny is the powerful and sensual chemistry between the lovers, especially between Poitier and Carroll. What's significant is just how amazing a listener Diahann Carroll was. Every frame and every film you see her in, she was always present and listened with such care and readiness. How anyone cannot fall in love with Poitier and Carroll together in the context of the story is just wild, as she tries to influence him to come back to America and be a part of the civil rights movement. And he gets persuaded just a tad. But if you haven't seen it, I won't spoil it. It's definitely worth seeing for sure, especially when you get a glimpse of what the beautiful relationship could be between Poitier and Carroll, which lasted for 9 years and ended quite sadly. I imagine majority of you all know how this turned out, but Poitier influenced Diahann to divorce her husband as he would divorce his wife so that they could be together, which she followed through on, but Poitier didn't. That would certainly leave a bad taste in your mouth and quite certainly hurt Diahann ginormously, as you can imagine. But amazingly and maturely enough, Diahann and Sidney remained good friends until their deaths, which again shows the high road of elegance, class, and maturity that Diahann Carroll beautifully exemplified. Number 2, Sister Sister. I know what you're thinking, but nope, no relation to the classic ABC WB show with the Maori twins. What a great show. But no, Diahann Carroll starred in this made-for-television drama, which premiered on USA in 1982, written by the goddess herself again, Maya Angelou. Carroll is so brutally wonderful as Carolyn Lovejoy, a woman who is having an affair with her pastor, who is also running for the Senate and using the money for the church to pay for the campaign. So he asked Carolyn to do whatever she can to fundraise the money. But at the same time, she is having the hardest challenge of getting along with her youngest sister, Sissy, played by the amazing Irene Cara. And on top of that, the middle sister, Frida, played amazingly again by Rosalind Cash, comes back home with her preteen son, and all hell breaks loose. This is definitely a made-for-TV drama that is generously fueled by the real performances all around. You have such a great ensemble cast, rounded out with Dick Anthony Williams, Paul Winfield, but it's the power of the three sisters that make this so engaging. Diahann Carroll absolutely should have been nominated for an Emmy for her powerful portrayal of a begrudging and controlling sister who tries so hard to keep the purity of her own home. But her dark secrets are what continue to eat her alive, not to mention the dark secrets behind the family that will start revealing themselves. My goodness, the fight between Rosalind and Diahann towards the climax is wildly intense. But hey, I mean, this was a good warm-up before she hopped on Dynasty 2 years later, right? Joking aside, once again, this is a performance that beautifully shapes the three-dimensional human being that Carroll could deliver with such heart. And now, my friends, here are some honorable mentions. Goodbye again. Yep, a small role, well, a really small role, practically a cameo in fact, as the lounge singer of the nightclub wherein Anthony Perkins is yearningly waiting for Ingrid Bergman. Carroll and Perkins have a small little scene together, and even with how short it is, she is so charming with uplifting Perkins in the most classy and sensual of ways. I mean, how could Perkins not fall in love with her? Especially with her singing the beautiful song, Love Is Just a Word, and the title song, Carmen Jones, the incredibly groundbreaking all-black cast film adaptation of Bizet's Carmen, with Diahann Carroll basically put in the back seat as Mert. Carroll originally auditioned for Carmen, and she was gunning for it, feeling like she could nail this role with her amazing stage background already before she hit Carmen Jones. However, once she found out Dorothy Dandridge was given the role, of course disappointment came in the picture, but director Otto Preminger loved her so much that he just wanted her in the movie. And so she lights up the screen as Mert, but what makes zero sense is her dubbing. Dorothy being dubbed, sure, understandable, but Diane's gorgeous voice? Come on, man! The Courage to Love. Quite an effective Lifetime film starring Vanessa Williams as real-life nun Henriette Delille, who was forced by her quadroon mother, played excellently by Carroll, to do the same as she did, marry a rich white guy and live life at great stature. But Henriette was called to do something more impactful, such as being the founder of the Sisters of the Holy Family Church in 1836, providing free education for slaves and free black people, which was against Louisiana law, obviously. But at the same time, she falls in love with a doctor played by Gil Bellows. And what is she to do? Dun dun dun! Vanessa Williams is quite efficient enough as Henriette, but Diahann Carroll owns every scene. That again, you're clamoring for more scenes with Diahann Carroll. Come on. Hurry Sundown, based on the Gilden novel, adapted by amazing screenwriter and playwright himself, Horton Foote, whose writing was completely hacked by the producers and directed again by famed tyrant Otto Preminger. This was prepped as being a replicant of Gone with the Wind, to unsuccessful results. However, Preminger's camera setups are pretty much on point, as always, and the standout performances from Michael Caine, B. Richards, Jane Fonda, and of course, Diahann Carroll give some merit to a couple scenes. For instance, the scene between Carroll and Jane Fonda in the white-only lounge, where Carroll is shaming Fonda for lying, is truly effective. The production was so unbelievably tense, with Preminger's rage, especially towards Faye Dunaway, as well as receiving death threats from the KKK. Needless to say, Diahann Carroll really did not like filming this movie at all, as you can imagine. Porgy and Bess, the film adaptation of the Gershwins' utterly classic and still controversial opera, directed by, surprise, surprise, Otto Preminger, starring Sidney Poitier and Dorothy Dandridge as the title characters, respectively. I say controversial because most black actors at that time thought the opera was perpetuating negative stereotypes, but at the same time, the music is truly gorgeous, which is why Sidney Poitier, Dorothy Dandridge, Pearl Bailey, Sammy Davis Jr., and Diahann Carroll totally gravitated towards the musical adaptation, even though she was still dubbed by Louise Jean Norman. Beautiful voice, of course, but my God, Diahann had an amazing voice, and producers wasted a phenomenal opportunity. But thank God, Diahann was able to showcase herself as Bess and Sammy Davis Jr. as Porgy on both of their respective shows, the Sammy Davis Jr. show in 1966, and then Diahann Carroll's very own variety show, which she had 4 variety specials filmed during the summer while the Carol Burnett show was on a break. The film itself, I hate to admit, guys, is not my favorite because I just can't stand how far away everything is in the frame. Due to how Preminger felt about the producer Sam Goldwyn, it seemed like a cursed production, with even the Gershwins not approving of it. But there's always one magical miracle of an artist involved in cursed productions, right? And one of them certainly is Diahann Carroll here. It baffled everybody in the ensemble with how Carroll could get along greatly with the wild tyrant himself, Otto Preminger, since he screamed at anybody that breathed. But Carroll said herself, "I was raised by my father, and if I'm not scared of him, what makes you think I'm scared of Otto Preminger?" And with that easy confidence and sternness Carroll had, Preminger respected that, and they became really great friends. Props always has to be given to an artist who can make friends with a director who has a reputation of killing anyone's confidence. That's just the kind of gift she was to the art form. Number 1, Without a doubt, ladies and gentlemen, Claudine. Diahann Carroll's only Academy Award nominated performance for Best Actress, which is a real impactful performance to be remembered. The role was originally going to be played by Diana Sands, a friendly rival and dear friend of Carroll's, but Diana was deep into her battle with cancer that she knew she wasn't going to last. So she urged the producers to bring her dear friend Diahann Carroll to the role, with the producers absolutely refusing because Carroll was just too sophisticated, too elegant to play a single mother of 6 kids on welfare in 1970s Harlem, as believed by the producers. But Sands said, "She's Diahann Carroll. She's an actress, and she can do anything." It almost becomes a really great gift to Diane because of how hard Diane fought to have Diana on Julia. Diane came to set. 2 days later, Diana Sands passed away. So needless to say, Diane dedicated her performance graciously to Diana Sands. And what an amazing 3-dimensional performance it is. The chemistry between she and James Earl Jones as Roop is just sensual fire, and the hilarious contrast of Roop at her home with the kids, seeing their family dynamic for the first time, is nothing short of magic. Guided by Curtis Mayfield and Gladys Knight and the Pips' joyous and heartfelt score, we see so beautifully the ebbs and flows of Carroll doing her absolute best to raise her kids, and at the same time live her life and find true love. My God, when she says in bed with Roop, I'm always thinking, even when I'm sleeping, I'm thinking, oh, do we feel that? The most powerful moment indeed has to be when she finds out her daughter Charlene is pregnant. And then she lets loose in the bedroom. Oh my God, is it visceral and horrible and tragic? And then cut to the both of them at the dinner table in silence. The look on Carroll's face says massive disappointment, but many apologies at the same time. Her powerful and heartwarming performance as Claudine in this independent film resulted in her being the 4th Black actress in history to be nominated in the leading category. My gosh, she was such a real artist that valued doing the work, stretching herself, tackling roles that were difficult, different, challenging, that required more effort to tell the story with the most believability that the story deserves. We all know, ladies and gentlemen, that she certainly wasn't perfect, and not every film she made was certainly amazing. My God, do I have to mention the elephant in the room? Oh God, the Star Wars Holiday Special, Blimey Charlie. That musical sequence where she basically plays a virtual reality singing porn star is absolutely jaw-dropping. But we don't blame Diane for that awful piece of garbage, do we? No, sir. She has blessed us with her voice, her characters, her charity work, founding the Celebrity Action Council, working with rehabilitating women. Even though Miss Carroll only received the T out of the EGOT honor, she took the T and left the ego aside and made pioneering work that helped open doors for countless Black artists that we know and love today. Let me tell you how strong and tough this woman was, having been diagnosed with breast cancer in 1997, but kept fighting through, shows how this woman was made of steel. Even though the cancer would come back in 2019, she still held an example of staying strong through a very challenging time. She has blessed our hearts in every platform you can think of, breaking barriers, fighting forward in her own style and elegance to create the best art she could challenge herself to create. And she did all of this with positive action because, and I quote the icon herself, by taking action and doing something positive, fear is replaced with hope. That's the final scene, ladies and gentlemen. But please tell me, do you agree with my picks? What are your favorite performances by this legendary icon? As if we've never said goodbye. Please share in the comments below and share with all your friends if you like this. I do encourage you guys. Please click like here, subscribe, and ring that bell to stay updated on more content to come, which will be very soon. And until next time, my friends, thank you so very much for watching. And always remember to love one another.